Welcome back. So we're going to keep going on with our dog. Now, keep in mind, I know I've said this a number of times, this is not a dog. This is the idea of a dog. It's like the blueprints of a dog. I like idea. Doesn't do anything. So let's go ahead and actually make a dog. Now, a dog, oops, shouldn't have had that there. Now when you make a dog, it's called instantiation, or I like to say just creating an object because they're called objects in object-oriented programming. This is going to be your first object. So to make a dog, you go dog1 equals new dog. So this is now our object, dog1. Now what this means is that this dog contains everything in this class. This dog can move, this dog can make noise, this dog has a location, this dog has a weight, this dog has a name. Now, what is this dog's name? Well, we haven't really given it a name or a weight, so it just has its normal null string for the name and then 0 for, the decimal and int and whatever values. So how do we give this dog characteristics? Like how do we give it a name? Because it doesn't have a name. How do we give it a weight and how do we give it a location? Well, look at this right here. This is, you may not recognize it because it's kind of out of place, but that's a method call, right? Anything that has parentheses after a word is a method call. So that's what that is. That's a method call. So where is that method? I mean, it's obviously not over here, and it's nowhere to be seen over here. Well, I'm going to explain where that method is after we talk about something called the constructor. Now, in most tutorials and books that I've seen and read, the constructor is always pushed kind of down the road a little bit, but I prefer the constructor is what made it all make sense for me. Once I figured out what a constructor was, that's when classes and objects made sense. So I am going to start with that. So I'm going to go ahead and just make the constructor real quick. Oops, not what I wanted. That's the problem. And I am out of it, sorry. Okay, and this constructor is going to take some parameters, so all right. So this is a full constructor. Now, I know there's some, wait, what's going on here? Oh, I'm stupid. Yeah. There we go. So I know there's this keyword, and of course the public and the private. Of course, we haven't talked about that, but we will get to that. And this keyword will be covered in this video. But this is the constructor. Now let's go back over here. Now we've got an error. Look at this. Dog now has an error. Now what does it say? It says there is no argument given that corresponds to the required formal parameter name of dog string int. So the main thing is, look here, string int and int. So it's telling you it wants a string and an int and int for the arguments. So that is because right here we built this string name int weight int location. So we need to give it a name, a weight, and a location. So that's how you give your dog a name. So we'll go Bob, I guess. We'll stick with Bob. And we'll give it a weight of 44 units, wherever you want it to be, pounds, I don't care. And location of 50, doesn't particularly matter, it's just a number. So now you have given your dog a name, you've given your dog a weight, and you've given your dog a location. And you've done that through this method call. And it's not just any method call, it's a very specific method call called a constructor, or a very specific method called a constructor. Two things on how you identify a constructor. See, the name is dog, and the name of the class is dog. That's how you know it's a constructor. The other way is a constructor doesn't have a return type, right? So down here we have void. A return type could be int, double, whatever. Constructors don't have that. So that is your constructor. Another thing too about constructors, they get called instantly when you make the object. So we made this object and we called the constructor. So here's your constructor. What does this mean? This word, this. What does that mean? Well, let's click here. See how when I click on name, this name up here lights up? So I go name. So that's how you know they're the same variable, right? So if I click on this name lights up. Okay, that's how you know that's the same variable. So how is it distinguishing name from name? How are these two names different? Because this name is coming from right here. That's Bob. Bob's passed from this method call right into this method, just like weight and location. So how does it distinguish between the name that I've put in this class and the name of the variable that I'm using to assign the name of the dog? So the name Bob. This keyword, this tells the compiler that you're talking about the variable name in the class. So here's another way we can kind of distinguish it. Look, this is pretty kind of something else that people might do if they don't like the word this. I like the word this. I think it works best. But some people prefer to do it this way. So look, they've slightly changed the name to differentiate the name class from the name that's being passed in. Because if you just do this, name equals name, it has no idea what you're trying to say. Of course, name equals name. It's the exact same thing, right? So you have to distinguish between the name that's being passed in to the name that's already in the class. And this is the keyword that lets you do this. So that's how you call a constructor. Now, remember before we had, let's go ahead and just get rid of these parameters. And now we've got an error. And then I'm going to take this. And if you look on your screen, you can comment out with this little button here. So it just comments that whole thing out for you. So it's like that constructor is not part of our code, right? Remember, I haven't talked about comments in a long time, but hopefully you know what comments are. And then we go back over here, and our dog is fine again. There's no problems. Of course, we haven't given the dog a name or anything, but there's no compiler error. So what's going on is you're given a default constructor, and it looks like this. Like literally, that's a default constructor. So this is in the code from the beginning. Like you don't have to write it unless you want to have a second constructor, which usually you will. So, but the minute you write a constructor that takes parameters like this, this one will go away unless you code it. So that's why we got that error message. This is called like the given constructor. And I can't think of the right term for it right now, but this constructor is here for you. Look, I can delete it and no error because it's just there. It's in the code. Unless you make your own constructor, you're going to have problems. So that's constructors, and I hope that makes sense. What I want to emphasize is there are a lot to classes. I mean, there's polymorphosis, abstract classes, inheritance. They're all very easy if you understand these very simple concepts of classes. So if you didn't understand this, watch it again, and get it, because you don't want to try and go on unless you understand everything we talked about so far. Now, I mean, we haven't really talked much about classes, but hopefully what I've said so far makes sense. The constructor, and how the variables, how dog1 is, holds all this information. Hopefully that all makes sense to you. All right. See you in the next video.